It is the Stranger Nerds here. We have myself, Connor Vandermark, and Tommy Grant also with me as we're doing this episode Mano y Mano.
Yeah.
As
Fuck you,
Mitchell
Mitchell and Nick.
and Nick could not make this one. So as you probably have heard throughout this series so far from especially Mitchell and Tommy, that they have some qualms about this episode. And me and Tommy are joking that Mitchell got out easy not doing this one.
He
We'll get into
definitely
it.
did.
I have some different thoughts. But
I
we
will
will
defend
go
you.
into seasons.
I will defend you slightly. This episode has importance, but overall it sucks and should have been taken out of the season to be dramatic.
So this is season 2, chapter 7, The Lost Sister. So fun fact with this one, this is the only episode that is directed by Rebecca Thomas. And yeah, this is the fourth episode written by Justin Doble.
Yep.
So that was the body one, the bathtub, and the polywog.
Yep. And he wrote some good
So this
episodes. This was
episode,
his weak spot. And we don't see him
um,
write ever again.
so this episode, oh really?
Yep. Yeah, so
Interesting.
when I wrote this
Um,
note in terms of the fourth and final, so I looked at all 4 seasons of all the writers and directors. This was the first one Rebecca Thomas did, and she never comes back. Justin Doble did 4 episodes, and this was the last one that he wrote for the show. So I think because of how poorly received this episode was, I don't know if it's just they weren't invited back or they just didn't get a chance to come back, but it definitely goes to show it was definitely poorly received by the fan base. In terms of critical reception, I'm not sure how well it did, but it's kind of it's the last Jedi of Stranger Things world, if you can compare it to that.
I guess so. So this is a unique episode from what I can at least recall so far we've seen, where this is an only a one character focused episode. As either we
Yep.
haven't had one yet so far, where we're
This
focusing all on L. Go ahead.
it's not a spoiler by any means, but this is the first and only episode of the show so far, like going up through season 4, where it's solely focused on one character. I don't know if that's because of how poorly it was received with this attempt to do a solo character episode, but this is the only one they do. But it's also because 11 was not in the last episode at all, which is the only time she was not in an episode was last episode. And clearly that was to make up because they were doing a full episode on her for this one. But it just...
Yeah, definitely. It was again. I wanted. I will take lead on this episode because the fact that again, I thought it was. We'll get into ratings later, but it wasn't a top tier episode. But I thought it was still good. Like I thought there's
it has its
a lot
importance.
of things that occurred.
It was important, and I think the execution or the writing, I don't know what it was, but just to me at least, it just wasn't what it could have been. I know what they were attempting to do, and you can compare it to a lot of big movies where similar to like Star Wars and Marvel, where you have a character kind of go off on their own little side quest, which this definitely was. It was an 11 side quest to find her lost sister, who she was convinced that her mom wanted her to find. She finds this person, and this person ends up teaching her how to kind of improve her powers. And you can compare it to, Luke Skywalker in Empire Strikes Back, which is a very well known successful sequel where Luke goes off on a side quest. Yoda teaches him how to use his powers more. And then he ends up abandoning Yoda to go help out his friends, which is what 11 does at the end of this episode. So you kind of get that trope of, main character going on a side quest, learn more about themselves, increase their powers, and then go back to help out their friends. That I think that's what they were trying to attempt in this episode,
Yeah,
amongst other things.
and we'll get let's get into it.
Yeah.
So we start out with 11. No, again talking with. I remember her name was Becky. Doing
Yep.
the flashback and talking about like the how it was like a continuation circle of these events happening in her mind
Yep.
and the thought that we has to go find her lost sister. Any relevance on the actual of the kids, the newspaper articles that you because I see you have it tagged in here.
So it was just something since I was watching it for the thousandth time, I was like, I never actually paid attention to what the articles were, but we see that Terry, Eleven's mom, was doing kind of an investigation into Hawkins' lab when she was trying to find Jane. And Becky was even telling Eleven like she was digging into all these missing kids across the country trying to find her. But we kind of see the importance of how big of a reach Hawkins' lab had. Because I think all of these articles were referring to
Mm-hmm.
the special abilities that Hawkins probably kidnapped. And you have one article where it's like Cleveland teen goes missing in Indiana, one from Pawtucket, a father and daughter go missing. Then you get a baby boy abducted from county hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. That one was interesting because I actually like froze it and like zoomed in on the article. And literally the quote of the article is a newborn baby boy was reported abducted from a nursery and a nurse was found dead in her home. So it's like it's very similar to what happened in season 1 where, you know, they pretty much just killed anyone that got in the way. Like you had Benny get killed
Yeah.
when they were trying to find 11. So it's like it kind of reads the vibe of Hawkins was stealing kids and people were getting caught in the crossfire like this nurse. And then the last one obviously was a vanished Indian girl missing in London. This was obviously Callie number 8. But what was interesting about that was you have all these kids going missing across the US, but you have one girl who goes missing in international territory. So knowing that she was from Hawkins Lab, they were doing shit internationally. It wasn't just a local thing that happened. Like it wasn't just a local experiment with Terry Ives and maybe a couple local people that wanted to get into this experiment. Like they were pulling people all over the world. So that was the importance of why I wrote
Yeah.
down article names because you kind of see like Terry
No,
caught on to how
I
big
like
of Operation Hawkins was doing.
I like that. I'm glad you actually did catch that because that definitely puts things into more context.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so 11 tries to locate 8, and then finally locates her around like kind of like a void around a fire, like a kind of like a drum, like you have with the
Yeah,
homeless
it's
would
your
have, like through the winter.
stereotypical homeless in the middle of the streets kind of
Development.
dumpster fire type thing.
And then 11 comes out to tell Becky, and then we see her on the phone, who I to me, I don't know who it was, but probably some connection to her, to 11, that is, and at least to me as a listener, someone that 11 does not trust, because 11 wants to keep things relatively low key, and anyone else knowing, especially with Hopper, has driven into her brain
Yep.
of no, no one else, keep things to yourself, and having someone else, having Becky call and getting people to know is not a good thing.
Yeah.
So I want to cut before we go into the expedition of 11, since we did not touch on it last episode. I want to make sure that we do here, because I will reference this later on. Is there's a scene in um, with Hopper where in between them checking in on Will and then Will getting, I believe, uh, asked about like, oh, not recognizing Bob, and Hopper's radioing in to 11 because doing the Morse code and like trying to let her know like no, I'm sorry I haven't been around, and it was very no, wish I saw this earlier from Hopper. No, as a character, but like characters definitely have to grow, and this is a storytelling. No, is a show, but it's nice to see Hopper becoming more vulnerable to L and having a situation where he knows he's screwed up, and actually let her know and say I'm sorry, and genuinely saying I'm sorry, and I don't want to lose you, and no, from what we saw in the scene, like he was saying this to no one, and like as the viewer, I was like, oh, that is just gut wrenching because the fact that he's letting his heart out for her, and she's not even there to receive it.
Yep.
So, and we'll get a little more to that later, but like during that episode, during episode 6, I was like, oh, that is such a that is a heartfelt but gut wrenching moment when you see that.
Yeah, you finally
So we
see
get into
Hopper
11, taking a
become more of a dad figure, not just a protector figure.
mhm.
Because we've seen Hopper
Yeah,
so
which
closed off on emotions and just wants to be Mr. Tough Guy, and he kind of realized like, hey, I can't just be her protector. Like, I need to be a father because that's what she needs sometimes too. And we finally see him open up, and yeah, it's just I feel so bad for him.
yeah, and probably honestly, probably the situation with Will too is also leading into that factor as well. It's like, oh, this kid might die right now,
Yep.
and I don't know where my girl is. So speaking of the girl, 11, taking a bus to Chicago with a awesome background sound, one of Jersey's greats, Bon Jovi,
Hmm.
um,
Gotta love it. Representing
and
Jersey,
Runaways. Oh, such a good song. I love Runaway. Um,
and it
so
fits the
she
scene
goes to
too
the
because
homeless
she literally
community.
was running away.
Yeah, running away. Yeah, yep. It was again the music choice in this show so far has been top tier. I've been loving it over and over. So she finds out where the crew we see in the very first episode, um, when we first had a visual on Callie, uh, we found out their hideout in a warehouse, and very interesting scene where the first interaction between the members, uh, where the one spiky hair member, uh, Axel, he it's like, oh, how'd you find us? They're sketched out. Like, how this random kid find us, and how does he know there's another girl here? And then we start seeing, we see Callie's power for the second time, and we see that she's able to create images within someone else's brain, kind of like an illusion, but just for that one person,
Yep.
or just for the people she chooses to see, is a better
It's
way to
very
put it.
similar
And
to the Scarlet Witch from Marvel. It's
yeah,
probably a
it's
good
a good way
way
to
to
put it.
compare it to.
Uh, So Axel sees spiders all over him. He's arachnophobic, so he freaks out. And then as Callie and Eleven like start talking to each other, they see like, oh, they have the same. They check tattoos,
Yeah.
and they they go through and like, oh, we actually are from the same place, and they definitely have that, kind of that trauma bonding in a way too, where like they've been to the same experiences. But the thing too, we definitely we I'll just talk about it now, where we see some of the experiences Callie's went through, especially the gentleman who they hunt down later,
Hmm.
where it is very traumatic for her. We don't really we see the Elle getting dragged into the other room, but we didn't see any interactions when she was younger. We see more recent events of compared to season one of recent events of season one, where no, their Papa, Dr. Brenner, was definitely uh, accosting, I guess would be a good word to put
Yeah,
with her.
I think that's a good
And
term.
but it wasn't like the the shock stick that she received, like that eight did, and definitely not the treatment that her mother went through. But we don't really see, at least to my perspective and what I remember, we don't really see actual huge violent uh
Well,
offenses to
you can also
11,
put that
at
maybe
least
because I think 11 was more favorable for Brenner because Brenner found a use for her. 8 might not have had an ability that
Mm,
Brenner could have used, and so they kind of just they kept them there because they didn't want them out running around. So they had to keep them there, and they were
yeah,
usually probably more the ones that got beat up more because they were an inconvenience at that point. 11 was the one that Brenner wanted for what he was looking
yeah.
to do,
It was
at least from what we've
wasn't
seen.
as valuable. At least it wasn't as valuable of an asset.
Yeah.
So we have the group. We have Axel, who is the Mohawk man. Dottie, who is the druggie. Uh, we have Mick, who is the spotter. Remember that was the right way to put it. And then we
Yep.
have Funshine, who is their front man, their fighter. So one thing that I texted Tommy earlier, and I think personally that this is very much the A Team dynamic, which was released in 80 to 83, because I did Google that one, because I was wondering when that show was released. And especially with the van they're driving it to, is very
I
A
was gonna
Team
say
esque.
that the van definitely gives it the 18 kind of vibe.
Because you have B.A. Baracus, who is, all you guys know is Mr. T. He
Yep.
fits that, the front fighter. You have, um, crap. I know there's Face, who I would probably say is Dottie. Um,
Yeah.
no, so no, Dottie would be. I'm pulling it up right now just because I can't pull it out. A Team characters, because A Team is something I grew up with as a child because my dad loved the A Team, and I actually watched through the first 2 seasons of, probably the first, probably even 3 seasons of the A Team. Yeah, it was Hannibal because I love that's Hannibal is probably my next pet's name, honestly. Um, Hannibal Africanus is a well-known uh, Carthage general back in the Roman Punic Wars. So you have Hannibal, you have you
I
have
can see
Hallen
Dottie being
Murdoch,
Murdoch.
who, yeah,
I see Dottie
Murdoch
as
being
Murdoch.
definitely Dottie. Yeah. Then you have Temple Peck or Face, who would probably be, I guess, the spotter in this case. No, the keeping the eyes out, getting the information, and then of course, B.A. Baracus would be uh, our wonderful
Sunshine.
fun, yeah,
Funshine.
Funshine. It's such a fun name though. I like that Funshine. I thought was a very clever name for that character.
Yeah.
So, and like, no, they explain like they hunt down the people who used to hurt them, and uh, so one thing that I want to touch on was, is it a general, anyone who hurt this party themselves? Because I,
They aren't very specific because that was an odd thing that I noticed too when I was rewatching this because 8 is the only one from Hawkins' lab.
yes.
The rest of the crew are kind of just, as they kind of call themselves, they're outcasts that society has given up on. But I want to know what was their motive behind killing? Because they have no gripe with this, the Hawkins lab group. And as far as your question is concerned, I think 8 is going off of who she remembers. I don't know if she knows like the current staff. So I think they're
No.
going off of people that worked at the hospital at the time. And I think it's taken them so long to go on all these jobs because they have to do all this research to find them, which is why 11 was such a key new member for their group because like she can find them for us
Hmm.
and we can get this done so much faster.
And all you need is a photo.
Yep. And that's
So,
kind of what they had. That's all they had really was just photos to go off of.
and at least to my perspective, like Kaylee definitely seemed like or Callie, sorry, Callie seemed to me like the ringleader of the one who is calling the shots.
Yeah.
And Axel definitely put up some resistance when we first saw them in episode 1. They just came back from a job, and they did show a scene from that where she made the illusion that the underpass that they went through collapsed, and we have this like kind of montage situation where, I won't say montage, but a scene where Kaylee's showing 11 like, oh, focus your anger, like kind of the opposite of the Star Wars with Luke Yoda, where Anakin's the one who's going to, yeah, Palpatine to Anakin, having the show notes.
But it's
No,
the Sith side. You have,
yeah, the Sith side. Yep.
you have basically she's kind of acting like Palpatine, like do it, use your anger.
Let it flow through
That's
you.
quite literally what she says. She's like, use your anger, use all those painful emotions and memories you have, and we see it work. So 11 definitely is kind of on the dark side trip right now, where she's like, oh, all I need to do is tap into my anger, which right now she has a lot of, which is because she ran away because she was so angry. So she's got a lot to tap into. But we later kind of we'll probably end up seeing her kind of snap out of it a little bit towards the end of the episode. But as for right
Yeah.
now, Callie's just on the full. Let's see how much we can stretch her powers and see how much strength she really has, because 11 never used her abilities to the max. Like, we've seen her progress a little bit. She's flipped the van. We've seen her kill multiple people at the same time, but we've never seen her move a whole fucking train before. Like, that's you know, she's fucking strong.
Yeah,
And
that's heavy
she's
as hell.
and we also see her stamina increasing, because before, every time she did something, she'd get knocked out. But Callie's kind of teaching, like, hey, if you can tap into this anger, you're not gonna be wiped out every time you use your powers. You'll actually be able to keep moving and doing stuff, which is definitely a big thing for 11, because she'll no longer have that one and done kind of move. It's like, I can keep doing the same move over and over and not get exhausted, which will
Hmm.
definitely be important.
And the one scene, I'm glad that they touched back onto it, was uh, where Elle's trying to move the train, and she's seeing Brenner and like the shit she went through. But it really drove her real mad is when she got jealous over Max talking with
Mm-hmm.
Mike. And I thought it was a really nice touch. I'm like, yeah, she is still not over that, and because again, she's in her own little fishbowl, and it's definitely a driving factor of Ale does have feelings for Mike too, and she sees him as well as someone who's very close to her, emotionally, and that's something that is still gripping at her heart. Of no, it hurts her, it hurt her bad.
Yep.
So, so then they go. Elle recognizes one of the faces, and that was the face of the man who electroshocked her mother, and it's like, okay, this is the one we're going after. Pinpoints where he is, which is about an hour outside of Chicago, and they go out there, get some gas, and they fool the clerk, trying to steal some goods with
Yep.
their clerk. Then pulls out a gun, and then they kill him. And then from there, the cops are called, and hell breaks loose. They're getting out of Dodge.
Yep.
Go out to Ray Cowell's house, the man who was the electroshock therapy guy, uh, and they bring back the memories of who they were, and kind of make him.
It was a
There's
very
a
cool scene of how they did it, where she goes, "Do you remember us?" And then she makes him see the two of them as kids again. It's like, "Do
mhm.
you remember us now?" It's like, it was kind of a very creepy but effective move on Callie's part. And as an audience member, it's just like, it's almost like Shining esque, like these two like little girls dressed up in like little cute outfits, just standing there holding hands, like, "Do you remember us?" It's
Yeah.
like, it was kind of creepy, but it was cool. And you
Now I'm
definitely
trying to
see
think.
him go into panic.
I'll have to. I'll have to go around this later. But there's definitely something where I don't know, it was a recent show movie I saw that kind of had to play that same dynamic of like the show is based around that, like them taking revenge,
Mm.
and that's something they do bring up a lot. I gotta see if I can pull that one out of my brain. But like, I gotta say, Callie's ability, that thing is so crazy. Like, just the way that they're able to, this way she's able to manipulate and see what she wants you to see. That is something that I'm interested to see if that comes up later, if she ever comes back up. Because I don't know. Because honestly, I don't know if she's gonna be a one part thing in the story. I'm not sure. Um, I don't think she'll be a one part thing, but we'll find out.
Yeah.
Isn't like Elle told her where she was going to go later on. So with the ability of Kaylee making the two images of themselves as they were younger, then Callie definitely really tries to egg on 11 to make him suffer and really try to drag out his suffering to, what's the right word I'm looking for this, to make up for the,
She was trying to make her go full Sith to get revenge on what happened to her as a child.
but wasn't isn't just revenge though. It is, it's
Vengeance.
more, it's more of a sadistic nature in that aspect of like, oh, I'm gonna put you the same misery that you put through me. And
She wants
no,
an eye for an eye,
yeah.
but to more
How,
extreme, but to a much more extreme though, because they were just tortured. She's straight up killing them.
yes. And sometimes Hammurabi's code isn't always the solution on this.
And honestly,
Um,
with Callie's powers, like she could be much more sadistic if she wants to. She could trap them in a realm where she basically taps into their worst fears and makes them see it over and over for the rest of their life, if she really wanted to.
yeah,
Like how she did
honest,
with like how she did with Axel with the spiders and made him freak out. That was just a quick 5-second thing, but if she really wanted to, she could have done this to, you know, Ray Carroll and made him see something really fucked up over and over and over and over, and not even have to kill him to get the same sort of satisfaction. But she at this point is just so dark. She just, it's like, I just want them gone, wipe them off
yeah.
the board.
So then Ray then begs for his life and then tells her that he has connections to Dr. Brenner. Now, 11 is disbelieved that Brenner is alive because, uh, did we actually ever see his death?
We, it's a what Nick would call a Walking Dead death, where we don't. I don't think we get a full body confirmation that he's dead, but we're led to believe he's dead.
Recap me what happened again
Well,
from that
because
episode.
the Demogorgon came in and attacked him and the soldiers.
That's right,
So
in the
we're
school.
under the belief that the Demogorgon killed him, but we didn't get like the full death on
That's
scene.
true. And then you put it in the show doc, which is a very, very good question, is did 11 really never see if Brenner was alive through her powers? And it's a really good question to pose because to her, or at least as the viewer, it doesn't seem like it. It seemed like she already moved on from Brenner. Like, no, he was still Papa, but she was never really hunting for revenge against him.
But
And
not even for revenge in this sense, but just to see if he like we see her go to see Mike every single day for an entire year. She never
mhm.
thought to even once say like, "Hey, let's see if Papa's even alive,"
Or
because
even like,
we
yeah,
never she never saw him. Assuming that Dr. Brenner was killed, she never saw a body because she
no,
came out of the upside down and she walked out of the school, but never saw him. So as far as she knows, he could still be alive, which is now what she's kind of coming to that realization of like, oh shit, he might still be alive. But she never checked.
yeah.
And it could just be her being a kid not thinking of those kind of things, but at the same time it's like he's your biggest threat. He's the one who Hopper keeps basically saying like, we can't be stupid, we need to stay hidden because of the government, because of Dr. Brenner's going to keep hunting you down. She never thought to just even confirm like, hey, he's not even out there looking for me.
The other thing too, now that you pose it, is did Hopper ever ask 11 to go hunt to see if he was alive? Because Hopper never knew this. Hopper never knew of the circumstance of Brenner, unless he was like, oh, the assumption that he's dead. But we don't know if that knowledge is ever shared with him. We assume it is,
I
possibly.
don't I don't see Hopper being someone who even slightly encouraged 11 to use her powers
That's true. But
because
he does know she's using it though.
yeah, he
Because
does.
she's
But he asked her because like when we see her come out of the room the one time after she saw Mike, and he goes, "You saw him again," and like almost like a like you got to stop doing this kind of thing. He wants her to be normal,
yeah.
and he's been kind of repressing her powers that entire year, which is why we get a complete yin yang situation now, where it's like she's been suppressed for so long. It's like now she finally is let loose, and we have a character Callie who's like complete opposite, saying you got to use your powers to the max. And I think that's what the importance of this episode was in the sense of the story arc. It's like she's finally out from under Brenner's thumb, who's trying to focus her powers in a very specific path. Then she was under Hopper, who wanted her to not use her powers, and now she's with a quote unquote sister who's now basically saying you can do a lot more than what they've been telling you to do. Like let everything out.
So that's then when 11 was almost about to, I guess, enact her vengeance onto Ray. Then she sees a photo of Ray with two daughters, and then meanwhile, Axel comes across those two daughters, causing 911.
Mm-hmm.
And 11 has some humanity
Yep.
to have no, she has sympathy and doesn't want to kill a man who has two daughters. And Kylie is like, I want to shoot this asshole. And 11 takes it in her own hands and uses the power against Callie to fling the gun away out the window. And Kylie's pissed about that because she doesn't
Very
like,
good.
which I'm not surprised about because of the fact that she was underneath Brenner's and Hawkins Labs' thumb for so damn long
Mm-hmm.
that she is not like anyone else controlling her, which makes sense why she's pretty much the alpha in this group.
Yeah.
Though her
Well,
calling,
the other question I have with Callie's character is we don't know how long she was there for,
mm-hmm,
because at this point in time, 11 was there since birth, and she's now 13. So she escaped when she was 12.
yeah,
They have no memory of each other whatsoever. And this is given to two kids that were living in the same room together.
mm-hmm,
So they have no memory of each other. And 8 even says, like, you know, in her little backstory monologue, and we see in a little bit, it's like she explains, like, when I was able to use my powers, I escaped. So I'm
yeah.
assuming she had to have been at least maybe 6 or 7, maybe a little bit older to kind of understand what was going on. But we don't know how long they were there for. We don't know how long 8 was there for because she was a kid when she was kidnapped, based off of
Well,
that article. Because there's a
that's
picture
true.
of her at like I'm guessing maybe 5 years old, based off of the picture in the newspaper. Whereas Jane was there since birth, but they have no memory of each other. So it's like, how long were they actually there for? Or 8 was there for?
Yeah, the timeline is definitely muddled on that. In Callie's defense, I'm not surprised she doesn't remember L because the fact that when it comes to people who have trauma what that they've been through, they the mind tries to protect the person that no from
Yeah,
memories that are harmful.
they try to
So,
block it out, but at the same token, though, she's not trying to block it out because she's using those memories to hunt people down and kill them.
but the thing is, like you could have memories that like other memories that are blocked down, but some memories that are still prevalent. No,
Yeah,
there is a line that could be drawn where no to her that's just a time period that she doesn't want to remember and but there are still people who are seared into her brain of like that man is my enemy. And the other
yeah,
thing too, I will say this too, with her actually being kidnapped, she may had already had a concept of good and evil
yeah.
where no,
Whereas 11 never got those kind of social cues and norms.
like the only thing that 11 really has is the bad man. Like
Hmm.
there was never really a proper context of uh how she does this. Oh, another thing that popped up too. Did have my phone notes. I just been rolling off my memory of this episode so far. Um, did Dr. Brenner ever teach 11 how to read? Like we see how she's reading now, but like
I don't believe so. I
eh,
I don't I don't think 11 was given any sort of education by any means. She was more given a, it's gonna sound weird, but almost like a physical education. Like she was taught how to physically do things because they
yeah.
want her to be able to use her powers to do stuff. But in
Um
terms of reading, writing, I don't think she was giving any sort of education. Because I mean, we see that when we first met her in season one, like she doesn't know what anything is. Her language is very very limited to only like a
mhm.
few handful of words. So I would say she probably never learned how to read.
So cuz no, cuz I'm probably didn't catch this earlier cuz she's going to the documents like maybe we're assuming Hopper is teaching her as no, they're like, oh, this is the word of the day.
Yeah,
But I'm someone who does not really deal with childhood education of that age. Like, how fast can someone progress from some who has zero, who is literally uh, somebody who can really cannot not read at all to progression in not even 1 year.
yeah,
So that's something I was like, because she read through Hopper's files of where she actually found her mother.
yeah.
So that's something I was like, huh, we never really kind of covered this at all, really. I'm assuming Hopper's the one who probably
Well,
taught her, but like
you
still,
can actually make the argument she didn't because if you remember, she was watching the TV where the news popped up of Chicago, um, and that's where she kind of got the "this is where I need to go." So I think it was just kind of an odd coincidence that she ran into Callie in Chicago
well, she,
because
I want to say quits because they know where she knows where. If she's spying on someone, I'm just using the word spy for the situation. She knows the location where they are.
I think she's using images. I don't think she even read those articles. I think she was simply looking at the pictures. Because again, she skips over all the articles and goes straight to the one that had a picture of Callie's face and was like, "This is her."
No, but she had to read through like Hopper's boxes of stuff.
Oh yes,
She had to read that to understand what was happening.
true.
So I think now she has the ability to read. But I'm curious how deep it is, and like did something I don't think it's ever explored. So I thought it was very interesting. She,
Yeah, but at this actually, well, I'm trying to think now because even in Hopper's box, the first thing she really focuses in on is that picture of her mom with Dr. Brenner, and she goes, "Mama and Papa."
maybe.
So who knows how much of it she actually read versus how much she kind of looked through and looked more for things she recognized.
Hmm.
But
Maybe.
either way, I mean, either way, her education is at a bare minimum of what it should be. Whereas Callie is definitely more, oddly enough, is much more sophisticated and well spoken
Yes.
compared to 11, which is odd too because we don't know much about her backstory, but she gives a little more detail. She after she escaped, she had a family, but we don't hear anything about education or anything. So she definitely didn't go to school because she's living on the streets.
Hmm.
But yeah, who knows how well spoken she was when she was even taken?
Yeah. So we get to the, I guess, climatic scene here where they're all back at. So they escape from Ray's house.
Yep.
They get back to the warehouse, and they're all fooling around. Um, Callie does freak her out with the image of Brenner and try to like quote unquote face her fears of Brenner,
Yes.
which I thought was very manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
And then shit goes to hell where the cops show up uh, to try to bring them all in, and then that's when we see Callie's power at full strength, where she took all five of them and hit them in plain sight.
And the only part about that scene I didn't like was we know Callie can make images of obstacles. She can make an image of anything. She just simply made them disappear. Like, what would have happened if one of those cops bumped into them? Like, why not just make an image of something large and physical that they couldn't walk through, like a fucking car or a bunch of boxes, like something else? But she just simply made them invisible, and had one of the cops bumped into them, it would have been game over.
Yeah, or
But
something even
that's
makes a
just me
sound. Yeah,
nitpicking.
no, I completely get that. No, I thought the same. I thought the same exact thing. Um, so then they try to book it out of there, almost hop in the van, and then 11, 11 does 11 previously, once before the whole Brenner incident. Was it before the Brenner incident when she saw the visions of Hopper and Mike?
It was
Or
right after.
right after.
Um,
So
I think it was in her dream or something. I can't remember.
yeah, I don't remember exactly. It was maybe the nightmare that she was
Yeah.
having, where she actually does see the radio call from Hopper, which definitely did touch her, and then she sees the Mike yelling, "It's a trap!" of the situation with Will. So she knows that her friends are in danger,
Yep.
and that's when she has a turn of heart. And when they went to go try to leave, she's like, "I have to go back to my friends. I'm going home."
Yep.
And in which you mentioned to an old man in a bust at the very end. And because Kali was trying to convince 11 that her home was with her, but it was definitely 11. Like again, this, as you mentioned before, this was very much her trying to find herself, and the kind of transition arc for 11 as a character finding her, like again, finding herself throughout the whole episode.
Yep.
Um, Now, I didn't mind the episode. I think the real issue with this episode is the placement of it. If
Yes.
this was episode 6, I think it would have been a lot better received than it was if it was episode 7. Uh,
Yes. So
after the dramatic high that we left off on, and you're because I can imagine
yes.
people waiting. Like if you're binging, it doesn't feel as bad because I've when I did took my notes, I watched episode 6 and episode 7, and there was definitely a big drop off on pacing.
Yeah.
Of the stakes, the stakes in Hawkins didn't feel as high
No. And,
until they was reminded, oh, L has Hopper and Mike going through danger.
and that's kind of why I'm very insistent on saying season 2 is the weakest of the show, is because the pacing and the organization of the show makes absolutely no sense. Like season 1 was just a steady progression. There wasn't very many lulls, but it was all going in one clear direction. Here you have everything kind of focusing on Will being possessed, the I guess corruption of Hawkins, if you will, in terms of the destruction underground. And you have 11 on this kind of emotional side quest, but it's like you have the climax event of Will's story arc that impacts every character on the show because they're all there. And it's like you have this oh shit moment at the end of the episode, and then all of a sudden it's like we're gonna take a little break and just watch what Eleven's been doing on her little vacation to Chicago about a bunch of characters that really don't play any sort of role in the show. It's just they're just new characters that you're gonna see once and probably never see again with how it's left off. And it's like, why is this here? Why couldn't this
Yeah,
been a quick little, couple scenes here to show her meet Callie? Like they could have had a whole thing with Callie and a revenge plan and not had any other characters in, and could have been just a little story arc that was included in the episode to kind of say, all right, this is what's going on. But it's like you spent an entire hour following her just for 11 to abandon them, and again we'll probably never see them again because 11 basically abandoned them at the end of the episode to go back to her original crew. But in terms of the importance, it's still important because we do see 11 kind of grow personally, but also realize like she wants to be with Hopper. She wants to be with Mike in the party, and it's like, you know, she regrets leaving, but doesn't regret leaving. But
She
I don't
she
know.
found she found her priorities.
Yeah.
That's definitely a big character level up for her.
Yep.
Actually knowing what she wants, because before,
And
like,
on top of that, too, she gets a whole new makeover and look to go back to Hawkins with.
goth. Oh, I love the goth look. The slick back,
The
the
80s
slick
punk
back,
goth look.
the slick back hair was pretty sweet for her. I was like, all right, I can dig this. Um, I think that I don't know, because like I think it is very important, but like it's like the only thing I can think of is like maybe if you split episode 6 in half,
Honestly,
where
you could have had this episode just take place before episode 6.
yeah, well
Because
the issue
chronologically, it takes, with the exception of the fact that they show Hopper and Mike in there, but they could
that's
easily
the
just take
issue.
that out.
That's the issue though, because though that's a very important moment for her to realize my friends are in trouble, and that if you don't have that moment, there is no real incentive for her to flip unless you keep that in there, um and then then that's the tease of what's happening
I
into
think
6.
what could have been a better tie-in is if they showed the scene with Hopper calling to her on the radio after he goes to the car, because if they put that in the episode and had it take place prior to 6, we know Hopper's, it doesn't spoil anything about what's
Hmm.
happening at Hawkins, and she just had this whole realization of like, I miss my actual family, I want to go back to them. And now she can see her, her father figure reaching out and apologizing, kind of saying, hey, I miss you, come back. That could have drawn her back and not spoiled anything for what was going on, because then episode 6 would have happened and we would have seen that scene and be like, oh, it takes place at the exact same time, this makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a much better flow.
Hmm. Yeah,
but
probably. Yeah, that
but
probably would.
again, we don't get paid to do this, so it's just our
Nope.
opinions.
And whoever wrote this episode and directed it are now longer not writing for the show. So
Mm-hmm.
so I guess consequences have been made for that.
Yes.
Anything else? Again, no, not really. Again, not a really dramatic ending to this one. So
No, it was just that little cliche moment of some random person on the bus saying like, oh, where are you going? She's like, I'm going home. And it's like, yeah, no shit, like where else would you be going? It was kind of like we already knew that's where she was going. We didn't really need that scene at all in the episode. But again, that's just me nitpicking.
no, yeah, I can. That scene definitely is not
It could have
much.
been a much shorter episode than what it was.
Yeah, there's some things. Maybe I don't know. I feel like again, if it was earlier, then yeah, I probably would have gave it a. I think it would have been better.
Yeah.
Honestly, in a way, I kind of wish if you told me to watch episode 7 before 6.
Well, that's not how we do things, Connor.
I understand. I understand that because for the listeners at home, I watched 6 and 7 today. We did the episodes back. In fact, so we had our wonderful guest, Zach Wiley, on earlier. Um, I kind of wish you told me to watch 7 before 6, because I kind of I because it would have been a nice little game to play, like my reaction versus, or even have Nick watch
Oh,
7
it's like
before
what's
6.
going on kind of
So
thing.
because to it wouldn't have in reality it probably wouldn't have been as much of a consequence to me of the plot, because nothing, again, nothing in that episode really gets spoiled in
Yeah,
6.
that's true.
So it'd be kind of interesting to play that. So if we ever find another guinea pig, we can definitely try that out on season 2.
I will definitely look forward to see if I can find one that we can play around with.
But I think that's the only, probably is the only circumstance ever in the show,
Probably,
because
but I'll look anyway. We'll see.
we'll find it. All right, so scores. Um,
I have
I'm
a feeling you're going to be the highest.
I'm gonna give it a 7. I'm gonna give it a 7 flat.
Okay.
It's it's fine. I liked it. It was good, but it wasn't great. Like To be fair, that is the lowest score I've ever given an episode, but
Yeah.
like nothing to write home about, but it's still fine.
I
Um, yours
I'm gonna give it a. I think I'm just gonna give it a 5 flat.
5 flat, five point
5 flat
zero.
because it does have its importance for Eleven's character arc, which obviously she's one of the main characters of the show, so it's important. And we see more of the Hawkins impact on Eleven's past, and we get an introduction to 8, and it makes you ask a little bit more of like who else is out there kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was definitely the vibe of what they were trying to do. Is like, hey, like there's other characters we could try and introduce and be really cool. And it just kind of fell flat on its face. So I saw what they were trying to do. It didn't pan out, I think, the way they wanted it to, but it had potential. But for at least for 11's story arc, it was important. But overall, I just didn't care for the episode. I usually skip it when I rewatch the show.
Hey, sometimes you have episodes like that.
Yep.
Um, what was Nick's?
Nick's was a 5.6.
5.6. Oof. Man, I really am bringing the average up on that one. To be fair, this is the lowest I rated an episode was a 7. So, but the other highest was 7.3 was episode 2 this season, which also was a drag. And
So Nick's comments, just to put out there, he said he did not like it. Episode 6 was a nice build up, and this episode ruined it for him. There was too much 11 in one episode for him, and it felt very boring. And he also said it's nice 11 wants to go back to save her friends, but at this point it seems everyone has moved on. Is it actually better? so so
goes for it.
I think Nick is trying to articulate is Hawkins better without 11 in its life.
Uh, well, I would think
There-
opposite of that, but like,
I
yeah,
see his point though, because everything's been happening. No one's been missing 11 or saying, "Oh, we need 11 here," other than Mike.
mm-hmm.
So I do see Nick's point there. But obviously, with the fight to come, we know we need 11.
No, it's. I would say Hopper 2.
Yes.
I think Hopper in 11 is a significant thing for her. I know we still the scene, but like I don't know, like this episode makes me feel weird now. Now I'm trying to think like no, I'm definitely am doubting myself a little bit. I'm sticking my score of 7. I'm staying with it,
Hey,
and
you're allowed to like the shitty stuff. It's okay. Hey,
and I don't know. I thought I'm not sure. Like I thought it was decent. You know, I'm not trying to have your opinions to cloud my thoughts, but like I thought it was a fine episode. It was from recollection of episode 2. That was a lot of nothing burger, and let's be real. Nick rated this episode more higher than episode 2.
yeah.
So that's kind of, and I rated this episode worse than episode 2 overall. So that says a lot.
Yeah.
Um. So predictions for Mitchell. I don't know where to go with this one. I'm gonna go low. I'm gonna go a. I don't know how he's gonna feel about this one. I know he hates it as much.
He hates it much more than I do.
So he behind the curtain. He thought this episode will be half an hour long, as in the podcast that is.
I would have liked it to have been a half hour long, but you and I talked about it much more than I thought we would, so that's okay. It worked out.
I know, but like, I like you. Me and you like to dig into things, especially.
I mean, hell, even my show notes, like I usually have 3 or 4 pages. This was like a page and a half.
But the thing is, like, there's a lot of things that are like you mentioned before. Like this episode brings a lot of intrigue of other things that could be happening.
Yes.
And no, again, they could have done it better, but I thought was good. So um, I'm gonna say Mitchell gives it a 4.23.
Okay. I'm thinking he's. I'm gonna give super low just because I feel like Mitchell just trashed it, but I'm gonna say a 3.71.
And
I think he threw this one in the mud because he's very vocal, but we were both very vocal, but I know he sticks to his guns. I still give it. I can defend this episode and see its purpose, but Mitchell hated it.
mhm. And
Um,
Izzo gave it what?
Izzo gave it a 6.04.
Wow, he thought he went that high.
Yeah, surprisingly.
And email one to you. So drum roll, please.
Mitchell's rating for this episode was a 4.12.
Wow, I just went just over. So you were closest. So you were closest. Price is Right rules. I was closest to the pin.
Well, we're playing Prices Right
Price is
rules,
Right
so I'll
rules.
win,
So
motherfucker.
nice. So say was it 4.12?
Yep.
So the average for that is a 5.43 total.
Yeah,
Which,
definitely the low point of the show.
hey, even my 7, like the average didn't sink too low. Like
Yeah.
that sits nicely in between all of us. Um, he's probably gonna give me shit for my high score, but we'll find
Yeah,
out.
we'll find out next episode. We'll see if he actually listens to it by then.
Well, well, yeah, that's what this is gonna be released. God knows when right now. Probably, I don't know.
2 weeks
Well,
from now.
we'll find out. Anyway, um, so next episode is what title?
The Mind Flare.
What?
Yeah.
Oh man, I that I'm not gonna ruin anything, but that did go through my mind at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because that is a big D&D character.
at
Or,
the race, I guess you can say.
yeah. I was waiting for you to get to that episode because it's not a spoiler, but the Mind Flayer is definitely my favorite episode of this season. And I know
I
it'll definitely be one of your favorite. It's a very big episode.
man, that so just by that type of title, I can go into a lot of things.
Yeah.
And like it did pop up in my head earlier. Um, uh, but now that you just said that, that makes complete sense. Huh. Well, as you can tell, audience, that I have some things rolling through my mind, and we will get into this next episode when you meet us next.
Yep.
So, follow us on our socials, Stranger Nerds, Instagram and Twitter. And with that, we'll see you for chapter 7 of season 2. Have a good one.